Watching the news in English is a great way for you to improve your English, but let's face it, they often use very difficult vocabulary, idioms, and of course, those pesky English phrasal verbs. This lesson will be perfect if you are studying for the IELTS or TOEFL exam. Maybe you just want to have better conversations in English, or maybe you are interested in what is going on in the world and you want to learn English at the same time. In today's English lesson, we are going to watch a newscast about how President Trump ordered the bombing of places where Iran might be making nuclear weapons. Some people say he did the right thing. Some people say this could lead to a bigger war. We'll talk about the idiom all eyes were on. We'll talk about what ordnance penetrators are. We'll talk about what it means to be obliterated. We'll talk about exposed, fortified, radius, and so many more. If that sounds interesting to you, please go ahead, hit that like button. If this is your first time here, go ahead and subscribe.
Well, Trace, I think what's so extraordinary about tonight's strikes, not only all eyes were on Fordo, and for the past week we've been talking about the B-2 bombers and the massive ordnance penetrators. Those are the 30,000-pound GBU-57 bunker buster bombs. What we can report tonight, after Sean Hannity spoke to the president, we learned that there were six massive ordnance penetrators dropped on Fordo. And as the president wrote on Truth Social, that Fordo site is gone.
Extraordinary. Extraordinary is the first word they use that I thought might give you some trouble. It means very unusual or special. The U.S. took extraordinary steps by using powerful bombs on Iran. And in the picture, it looks like this woman has a lottery ticket. Winning the lottery was an extraordinary moment for her. Her life changed forever because she was now rich. I don't think the lottery is legal in every country. It's only legal in certain states here in the United States. But you can go into a store, buy a ticket that costs $1, and maybe you could win $1 million or even more. But the odds of you winning are very, very slim. They also use the English idiom all eyes were on. That means everyone was watching something. All eyes were on the sky as B-2 bombers flew towards Iran. All eyes were on him when he walked into class late. Hang on just a second. I need to interrupt the English lesson to let you know I am offering private one-on-one English conversations. If you want to improve your English and you want me to be your tutor, check out the comment section or the description below. There you will find a link to sign up, and if you use the code 10OFF, you'll get 10% off your lesson. Okay, now back to the English lesson. Now, this is the third English lesson about Iran and the US getting into a fight. So in previous English lessons, we've talked about uranium and enrichment. We might have even talked about what a B-2 bomber is. I know we've talked about them being stealthy, meaning like it can hide. Iran had no idea that B-2 bombers were flying over its airspace, but let's get an official definition on what a B-2 bomber is. U.S. military airplanes that fly quietly and carry bombs. The U.S. used B-2 bombers to hit Iran's nuclear site. And these things can fly for a really, really long time. The flight from Missouri, we will talk about where Missouri is a little later, but the flight from Missouri to Iran and back, a round trip flight, took over 30 hours. Ordnance penetrators. What are these things? We've talked about bunker buster bombs before. Well, these are pretty much the same thing. Bombs that can break through strong walls. The US used ordnance penetrators to destroy underground targets in Iran. Like breaking through a wall, we could say that it is penetrating through the wall. Massive, massive. This means very large or heavy. The bombs dropped were massive and shook the ground. In that picture, there are some massive waterfalls. I also have another sentence for you that uses massive. They moved a massive couch into the living room. In the picture, you can see that that bus has been obliterated. Let's talk about what obliterated means. It means completely destroyed. The military obliterated Iran's underground nuclear site. You could also have a storm obliterating something. The storm obliterated the old fence in our backyard.
My sources tell me that those bunker buster bombs would have been dropped through the air ventilation shafts at Fordo. So most likely 3 bunker busters through each of those shafts. We had been focusing on the entrances. There are 2 entrances to the Fordo site, which is 300 feet underground. We've also reported that the MOP bomb can penetrate about 200 feet underground, but they work in pairs. The B-2 bomber, which flew out of Whiteman Air Force Base, they fly nonstop and are refueled along the way to this site at Fordo.
In interviews, reporters often say, "My sources tell me." Let's talk about who sources are. People or information I trust. My sources say the attack was planned for weeks. What about this? Maybe they aren't reporters at all. Maybe you are in an English class and other people are talking, but you trust them. My sources told me the test will be next Friday. Ventilation, ventilation. Now, these bomb making sites, these enrichment sites, are very deep under the ground. So they must have some sort of ventilation shaft. We'll talk about those 2 words together. Ventilation first, a way for fresh air to move into a space. The bomb blocked the tunnel's ventilation system. We'll also talk about tunnel in just a minute. But take a look at this picture here for ventilation. This man is cooking some eggs. Well, maybe it got a little smoky in the kitchen. I opened the window for better ventilation while cooking. But you can also have a ventilation shaft. Let's talk about what a shaft is. Narrow, deep openings or tunnels. There's that word again. Promise we will talk about tunnels. The missiles collapsed the underground shafts. And in the picture, that man is working on an elevator shaft. The elevator goes down a deep shaft in the building. The reporter uses the term mop bombs. We've talked about bunker busters. We've talked about ordnance penetrators. We've talked about massive. Well, guess what? MOP stands for massive ordnance penetrator. Very big bombs that break into deep bunkers. MOP bombs were used to reach hidden areas in Iran. And those B-2 bombers flew from Whiteman Air Force Base. That is a U.S. base where B-2 bombers are kept. In Missouri. Missouri is a state right in the middle of the country. I'm pretty sure they keep those B-2 bombers there for extra protection. The jets flew from Whiteman Air Force Base to Iran. And guess what? They never had to land. They were refueled in the sky. at the beginning of a word in English probably means again. So the definition of refueled means get more fuel. The bombers were refueled mid-air during the mission. You could also refuel a car. In the picture, there is a bunch of gas going into a car. We had to refuel the car on the way to Boston. So at one point, it had fuel in it. Then the fuel got less, so you had to put the fuel back in. You refueled the car.
They drop one mop bomb, a 30,000 pound bomb that goes about 200 feet down. There's soil that is then removed, exposed, and then the second bomb, which drops into a hole that has a radius of about 25 feet. It goes into the same hole and can go even deeper. So Florida, we understand, is gone. That is significant because that was the main nuclear enrichment site, and it was deeply fortified in that mountain.
Soil. Soil and dirt are pretty much the same thing. The dirt on the ground is also called the soil. The bomb left a deep hole in the soil. One difference I think of when I hear soil and dirt, plants can grow better in soil. Exposed. That means left open or not covered. The explosion exposed Iran's secret tunnels. I visited Mexico a couple months ago and I didn't put sunscreen on my forehead. My forehead was exposed to the sun and I got a sunburn, or I got sunburn. Both work. Radius. When I hear radius, I think circle. The distance from the center to the edge. The radius of the blast was about 5 miles. Maybe you are visiting a new city and you want a good place to eat. We searched for restaurants within a 2-mile radius.
It goes into the same hole and can go even deeper. So Florida, we understand, is gone. That is significant because that was the main nuclear enrichment site, and it was deeply fortified in that mountain. But then there are the two other sites. You have Natanz, which had 3 underground enrichment facilities. Those 3, we understand that 30 Tomahawk missiles were fired from U.S. submarines about 400 miles away from these sites, the sites at Isfahan and Natanz. Those U.S. submarines were most likely Ohio-class converted guided missile subs. Most likely the USS Georgia or Florida were involved in those strikes.
Fortified. That means made strong and protected. Iran's nuclear site was heavily fortified, which is why the United States needed to take them out with like 38,000-pound bombs. The school was fortified with metal doors and security cameras. And in the picture, you can tell that building by the ocean was fortified. It has a big brick wall in front of it. Okay, they mention a type of weapon in the newscast, and that weapon is a Tomahawk missile. These are long-range missiles that fly fast and low. The U.S. launched Tomahawk missiles from submarines. And if you're wondering, hey, wait, what is a submarine in English? Don't worry, we'll talk about it right now. It's a ship that travels under the water. Often when you see sub in English, think underneath. A submarine helped launch the attack on Iran. And they talk about Ohio-class submarines. Ohio is the name of one of our 50 states, but Ohio-class submarines are a type of very large U.S. submarine. An Ohio-class submarine was used in the bombing mission. Converted, that means changed from one thing to another. The submarine was converted to carry missiles. So maybe when that submarine was first built, it couldn't carry missiles, but then something was added, it was converted, so now it can carry missiles. And in the picture, this couple, it looks like that woman is pregnant, and it looks like they are turning a garage where maybe they kept a car into a playroom for a baby. How about this sentence? We converted the garage into a playroom. They talk about the names of two submarines. They're basically the same thing, but the USS Georgia is the name of a US submarine. The USS Georgia launched missiles during the attack. And I asked AI, can you create an image of a Tomahawk missile leaving the USS Georgia? And then I said, hey, can you do the same thing for the USS Florida, which is just another name for a US submarine? And I was disappointed because they basically look like the same submarine, but the definition for USS Florida is another US submarine. The USS Florida helped destroy Iran's nuclear targets.
What I'm being told, though, is that Isfahan is an even harder target than Fordow. We hadn't talked about it as much this week because all the focus was on the B-2s and the MOP bombs and Fordow. But Isfahan is where the uranium hexafluoride is, where the centrifuges are made. And my understanding is there is a tunnel into the mountain there, and it is much, much deeper than at Fordow. And so we will have to wait and see the bomb damage assessment at that site to see how whether it was completely destroyed. I'm told from very, very knowledgeable sources that that was most likely the hardest site. So we'll have to see.
They mentioned centrifuge in the newscast, so let's get the definition. Machines that spin fast to separate materials. The bombs destroyed the centrifuges used for nuclear fuel. So I know centrifuges are often used in medicine. I didn't know, but I guess they are also used in making nuclear weapons. We've talked about tunnel a couple times in this English lesson. Let's get the official definition. A long underground path or hole. And you can drive your car through a tunnel, just like the one in the picture. Iran used a secret tunnel to hide nuclear work. Assessment. You can have many different types of assessments in English, but the official definition means a judgment or test to understand something. The military gave an assessment after the bombing, and I'm not sure why assessment has a capital A in that sentence. It should not. But here, it looks like this person went to their doctor for an assessment on maybe an injury. It looks like that person's blood pressure is being taken. Maybe you know, but I actually have a classroom during the school year. Luckily, now I'm on summer vacation, but I often, maybe like once a week, will give my students an assessment to make sure they understand the material. We took an English assessment to see our progress or to see how well we have been doing. And that's it. That is the end of the English lesson. Congratulations. Don't forget, I am offering private one-on-one conversations. If you want to improve your English speaking with me, there is a link in the comments. And right down there is a playlist about all of the English lessons on this channel about Iran. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.